Hey everyone, Jason Weckerle here. Today, or this morning, I'm getting out for white bass out on a local lake. I've been getting into a few of them on various lures like rapalas and spinners, little crankbaits, little soft plastic swim baits. But I wanted to go over my favorite white bass lures with you guys, lures that I think are probably the absolute best white bass lures. Whether you're fishing in lakes or in rivers, this is going to be a very extensive tutorial before we get out fishing, so I'm sure you guys will learn a thing or two. So let's get started. First, I want to go over jerk baits, like these floating rapalas in the 2 to 3 inch sizes. This is the size F7. I also like the F5. You can even go down to like an F3, but the 2 to 3 inch size, and you got to carry both of them because these white bass can be very size selective. Sometimes they want the little 2-inch model. A lot of times they go after this one. I like to cast this one starting out with because it's heavier. I can cast farther, and it keeps a few more small fish off your line. But I like using these as topwater baits, just twitching them, letting them pause on the surface. Or you can work them aggressively, kind of like a suspending jerk bait, just twitch, 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 to get that bait diving just a few feet under the water. But these jerk baits are underestimated, and when white bass are shallow, or if they're suspending out in deep water, sorry, my cat's meowing. But if they're suspending out in deep water, like high up off the bottom, you can get them to come to the surface for these baits, especially if you see seagulls around to dive bombing bait fish like shad and shiners, minnows. But floating jerk baits, whether it's a rapala or it's a rebel, if it floats on the surface, dives down about 1 to 3 feet, if you can twitch it on the surface, pause it, make it look like it's dying, it's absolutely dynamite. I also like suspending jerk baits, like the Rapala Husky jerks and the little S-Wraps. These are tiny little baits, like 2 inchers, panfish size, crappie size, white bass size. But I carry everything you see here, I carry for all panfish, whether it's white bass, perch, crappies, even bluegills. So you'd be surprised, sometimes big bluegills go after some pretty large lures. But get yourself a bunch of little floating jerk baits, suspending jerk baits, 2 to 3 inches long at most. Perfect size for white bass. The next category of lures I want to go through are just little deep diving crankbaits. I like to go with the size 4, size 5 Berkeley flicker shads. These are affordable. They catch white bass, crappies, perch. I like to go with a lot of black and white, gray and white, black and silver, chartreuse. Keep your colors simple with all your lures. I mean, when you get into like using streamer flies, which I'll tell you in a little bit all about, you can go wacky and wild with a bunch of different colors, but when it comes to these hard baits, these jerk baits, crank baits, spinners, spoons, keep it simple. Go with natural bait fish patterns that look like shiners, shad, minnows. But they also like going for some chartreuse green. They like hot pink. But those Berkeley flicker shads, these little tiny fat Rapala tail dancers, I think these are called the shad dancer. This is a size 4. Dives down about 7 feet. When you're dealing with some deeper water, the white bass love that crankbait. But just keep the colors simple, like I said. You don't have to go crazy. Black and white, chartreuse, chartreuse and white, gray and white, black and silver. Let's get on to the next category of baits now. and that's spinners. I like to keep a large selection of 1/8 ounce, 1/16 ounce rooster tail spinners. And again, I keep the colors simple, gold and chartreuse, or silver and chartreuse, silver and white. I like black and silver also. You can use MEP spinners. You can use Panther Martin spinners, any type of spinner really, in size. I like to use size 1, size 2, size 3 blades for white bass. But the 1/8 and 1/16 ounce, especially the 1/8 ounce rooster tail spinner, is by far my favorite white bass spinner. It's affordable, catches a ton of fish, and I feel like it might even catch a lot more fish than other brand spinners, if I have to be honest. But get yourself a bunch of inline spinners, and you'll be very happy because it's one of my best techniques for white bass. I'm going to move on now to blade baits. These are just slabs of metal with lead in the front of them. These are like the sonar. They're called the sonar blade bait. You can go with these showdown blade baits. These are really good. And these, you just want to cast them out there. You can let them sink to the bottom and rip them off the bottom. Or you can cast them out and just reel them steady. And they work a lot like a rattle trap lipless crankbait, which I'll also show you that. I forgot to mention these when I mentioned crankbaits. These 1/8 ounce rattle traps are absolutely dynamite. Black and silver, blue and silver, chartreuse again. But these are kind of like a blade bait in many ways. Not as heavy, but this rattles, this does not. But they have a very tight, vibrating wiggle. And I have caught thousands of white bass on these Bill Lewis rattle traps, 1/8 ounce. In some places, if you got big enough white bass, the 1/4 ounce will even work, the bass size one. But those type of baits, you just let them sink to the bottom, rip them off the bottom, or you just reel them steady. But if you're ripping them off the bottom, think about just jigging it. As soon as it touches bottom again, rip it back up, let it fall, rip it back up. It's a technique that a lot of walleye fishermen use with the rip and wrap Rapalas, especially like the Great Lake fishermen, like up in Green Bay, Beatty Knock, a lot of the rivers around the Midwest, that rip and wrap's been working. But those lipless crankbaits catch walleyes, trout, bass, panfish, white bass, everything, pike. So these little tiny ones, it's a no-brainer. When they're going after bait fish, which is most of the time, have some of those in your tackle box for sure. Now I'm going to show you guys a category of lures a lot of white bass fishermen neglect, and that's spoons. All you got to get is some 1/8 ounce little Clio spoons, 1/8 ounce Castmasters, 1/16 ounce, 1/4 ounce. But the Castmaster spoons, I've even done well on the very small KO wobbler. And these are baits that a lot of trout and salmon fishermen are familiar with, but they absolutely work for white bass. And I learned that one day when I was fishing out at the Wolf River, and I wasn't catching anything. I was throwing the tackle box, throwing every streamer fly, minnow, live bait, whatever. And these guys walk up next to me and they're using Clio spoons and all of a sudden pounding white bass. And I learned it was because I was fishing below the schools, fishing too deep. And those fish were just going after bait right on the top. And spoons were the bait of the day that day. And a guy handed me some. And ever since I've had that, I've had to have spoons in my tackle box for white bass. Now I'm going to go over jigs and plastics. Keep it simple. Curly tail grubs or Mr. Twisters. Just a 16th ounce jig or an 1/8 ounce. I like pink and white a lot, chartreuse and white. Orange and chartreuse tail can be good, but your Mr. Twister in 2 to 3 inch sizes, or the Berkeley Power Grub ribbon tail. Here you go, there's the Mr. Twister, classic bait. Even these fat 3-inch kaolin grubs are really good. But my favorite bait the past few years have been swim baits, and these Kitech 2-inch easy shiners, absolutely dynamite on a 16th ounce jig head, or if you can find an 1/8 ounce jig head with a small enough hook, but you normally can't. Absolutely awesome. Just cast them out, jig them, or just slowly reel them, and they just absolutely tear them apart. And I mean, that's just a classic way to catch white bass, is just using little plastic minnows, little tiny swim baits. There's all different brands, but I like these easy shiners a lot. They tend to rip a little bit easy, but I probably go through about 2 to 3 packs when the white bass are biting. But it's still better than using minnows, because every time you lose a minnow, you gotta rebait your hook. So you catch a few more fish off the soft plastics. But you can also go with just bucktail jigs, like hair jigs, and 16th and 1/8 ounce. These little tiny marabou jigs. That's a classic white bass bait. I used a Roadrunner 1/8 ounce jig head with a spinner blade, and I tied up a marabou tail off the back of it. That's highly effective. But all these baits right here that I just showed you are baits that you need in your white bass arsenal, because you're going to catch a lot of fish on these. And I'm going to show you one more technique. This isn't a hard bait. These are flies. But these streamer flies, which I've made other videos about, you can see that. These are just 2 to 3 inch streamer flies tied with bucktail and tinsel on a little size 6 hook. You fish these on a 3-way rig with a 5.5 to 6 foot leader, and then a 12-inch leader down to a pencil lead sinker. You use a 3-way swivel, and you space 2 flies 24 to 30 inches apart using Palomar knots. But if you're fishing in a river situation with current, the 3-way rig and these streamer flies are absolutely dynamite. Purple and white, purple and red, plain red with some gold tinsel, green and gold, green and yellow, red and yellow. I mean, you can go wild with the amount of colors that work for white bass when it comes to these flies. And if you find crankbaits that have similar colors, they'll work as well. I mean, there's not much difference between a Rapala and a streamer fly. They're just made to mimic bait fish. So if you're fishing in a river, that streamer fly technique is going to be probably your #1 best bait. Unless you're fishing super shallow water, then you might be able to get away with a fly fishing rod. But on these 3-way rigs, you use spinning tackle, throw it out there, let that pencil lead sinker hit the bottom, and you just jig it, and just keep up with it. Keep a tight line, make sure that sinker's on the bottom, pause it once in a while, and that current will pull that long leader, that 5.5, 6 foot leader, which I like to use 12-pound monofilament for my leader material. Stiff enough to not allow the rig to tangle too much. And if you get a snag, you can pop your snag out easy. And I just tie that to 10 to 20 pound Power Pro braid as my main line. 7 foot medium light action spinning rod, 1 to 2,000 size reel. That's all you need. But you just pop that rig right up off the bottom and you'll catch a lot of white bass and a lot of walleyes. But I'm gonna shut up now, pat this all up, pat the car, and get out this morning for some white bass because the sun is about to start rising. Let's catch some fish. It appears this little guy and this big girl up here don't want me to leave right now. They like to do this showing off on the staircase stuff, trying to rub their scent all over me and everything. But this guy right here is Mr. Orion, like the Orion's belt constellation. And she is Sky. She's our oldest cat. She's a big girl. I gotta get out fishing, guys. The sun's about to start rising soon, and I don't have much time before it starts raining. Enough cats now. Let's get out fishing. So I just arrived at the lake, and these assholes over here are fighting over a female, splashing all over my fishing spot here. Damn you ducks. Yeah, quack, quack. So right now I'm just twitching that Weckerle original size 3, a 2-inch bait. I'm twitching it on the surface and then pausing it. I'm just hoping those stupid ducks didn't scare. Oh, got one. Never mind. There we go. Spoke too soon. Maybe the ducks were good luck. It's a good start. Nice white bass. Hopefully they're turned on finally. We had a really bad cold front this past week, and it started warming up 3 days ago. Maybe finally the water temperature's warmer and maybe they're gonna start feeding. I don't know. Not a bad one, not a huge one, but he will keep and he will eat. Well, that was one fish. Let's hope that's not the only one. Caught that one right over here. Really shallow, like a foot of water. Oh, got another one. Right away. Oh, that one's a nice one. This is a good fish. Wow. This one's big. There we go. What a fish. Wow. Look at that. Big one. Very cool. 2 in a row on the Weckerle. Hopefully we can keep this momentum going. I was gonna bring my GoPros today, but they said it might rain pretty good, so I don't want to get my camera gear wet. It starts raining, I'll film the best I can, but there's number 2, folks. Just on that little Weckerle original. I'm just throwing that bait out there as far as I can, keeping the rod tip down, just giving it twitches. And they seem to hit it right on that pause a lot of the time. Oh, got another one. Holy crap. I think that storm coming in and that cold front later today got these suckers fired up. Got another one, man. Jesus. They have not been biting like this the past week, so this is definitely a weather system doing this. Voila. This is exciting fishing. They fight really hard. I'm using a light action St. Croix rod. 8-pound Power Pro tied to a 6-pound test fluorocarbon leader. Man, they just pull. They fight like smallmouth bass. They just don't jump as much as a bass would. But they just pull, pull, and pull. But I bet you any money, once it gets really bright out, the fish are gonna shut off. That's how these clear water white bass can be. They hit, and hit, and then they're done. Out on the rivers, you can sometimes have a bite that goes on all day long, but it's not like that on the inland lakes. Got one. There we go. Wow. I'm using a Piscifun Carbonets reel, and I love the way the drag, how smooth the drag is, how it sounds. That's another big one. Big fish splashing around in here right now. Could be carp, but I think they're white bass. Oh, there we go. Number 5, if I get them in. It's a nice one. Oh, and he's got one following it. That's really cool. 2 of them just followed him. Sometimes you just take a stick and try to there we go. Old trick. I'm gonna try the Kitech Easy Shiner now. See how this works. When they're biting, I like to see how many different baits I can catch them on sometimes. Here's one. Oh, I actually saw that one hit. That was cool. He's got some buddies with him. It's number 6. I've only been out here for about 20 minutes. It's pretty cool. You know those fish are fired up when they're willing to rise to the surface to grab a lure. Fish that are inactive don't normally like doing that. Oh, I saw that one hit. That was awesome. He's got buddies with him. Check this out. Let's see if I can. There they are. Trying to get that for you on camera. They always have, these schooling fish always have their buddies trailing behind them. There we go. Another good sized white bass. Got another one. Oh, smallmouth. It's not even a white bass, it's a smallie. Mr. Smalley had a taste for Rapalas. Don't get that hook in my hand. Oh man. It's one thing you gotta be careful for when you have treble hooks. These fish like to bury them in you sometimes. Little fat pork belly smallmouth. Nothing major, but it's another species at least. I'll be happy if I scratch out 10 fish, because that's 2 fish fries for my wife and me. We eat about 5 pieces of fish. So, oh, there we go. God, that one almost ripped the rod out of my hand. That's a big one. We got friends with him. Awesome. I think that's number 8 now. I was pretty much just saying that I'd be happy with just 10 of them this morning. They can shut off at any moment. Just as fast as they turn on, they turn off. So, taking what I can get. I've had a couple fish fries recently. I could use some more fish. But I don't fill up coolers full of them, that's for damn sure. I don't have enough freezer space, and I'm not greedy. I mean, I've seen people, because there's no limit on white bass, unfortunately, I've seen people really take advantage of a good thing too much sometimes. People have the right to keep as many fish as they want. Some people, they do exactly that. Oh, little guy. What is this? Oh, little tiny smallmouth again. Looks like they're coming in now. Oh, just pulled a hook out of his mouth. Little Aberdeen hook. Probably just saved that guy's life. In my opinion, the DNR needs to put limits on rock bass, white bass, and yellow bass because they're tasty panfish. Some people won't even give them a try. A lot of people love eating them actually, but there's people who just sit there and either they don't know how to cook, honestly, or their taste buds are broken or something because they're delicious fish. And there's no reason there's no limits on them. With as many fishermen that we have fishing nowadays, people take advantage of that no limit, like I was saying, and I've seen some disgusting greed. People filling 5 coolers at the rivers when the fish are hitting every cast. And I'm talking big coolers. These lakes don't have as many fish as the rivers do, and you can't keep everything and expect there to be a future to fishing. Oh, another smallie. Man, fish are fired up on Weckerles. And they're pre-spawn. This one's a little fat female. Hopefully there's some bigger ones than that around. Oh. What is this? Another smallmouth bass. Oh, yeah, smallmouth. Thought it was a largemouth for a second. They're not big though, that's what's unfortunate. Little guy. Thing is with these shallow water fish, when they're spawning, they spawn very quick. You might only get a week or 2 of fishing if you're lucky, and they're back out in like 20-30 feet of water suspending. They could be even 5 foot below the surface sometimes in 30 feet of water, but these fish like to roam around in deep water after they spawn. Here's what we got so far. Some really nice ones. I just lost a really big one before. But let's get back to fishing. Ooh, big one. Oh, I just had a big one follow. Holy crap, that was a monster. That was a freaking pig. Catching white bass in clear water is really cool because you can actually see them hit, swimming around. I love this shallow water fishing. I look forward to it every year. You can do this on a number of lakes in southern Wisconsin, all over the Midwest. You just have to find out what lakes have populations of white bass and pretty much go fish over the shallow rock bars and the shallow flats during springtime. If you have any places with current, like canals, dams, that helps out a lot too. Here's a nice, about a 2-pound smallmouth, pound and a half, 2 pounds, caught on the Kitech Easy Shiner. Not a bad fish. We're gonna get that one back. The white bass fishing slowed way down. I'm still working on my last fish for the past 30 minutes. Caught a bunch of smallmouth bass and then caught this nice one right here. That one actually had some white bass following it, so hopefully they're turning back on. All right, we are back in the car now. I'm getting out of here. The last hour and a half was really slow. If I would have caught every fish I lost and I had bite, I probably would have had 20 to 25 fish this morning. As you can see, peak feeding periods, low light conditions, and clear water make all the difference in the world. And this morning, it was bam, 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 and then it just died. And I knew it was going to by 7 o'clock. I had that feeling because it's always that way. It's like you better get your bait back in the water, not fuss around when they're biting, because you got to get those fish when they're turned on and feeding. All I saw after that were a bunch of schools chasing each other around and fighting, so they're definitely spawning again. But their feeding period was really short. I might have been able to get a few before sunrise, but pretty much it was that first light to about 7 o'clock is when I got all my fish. And it was like the first hour was on fire. You guys saw how many fish I was getting. And I didn't even film all the fish I lost. I mean, I'm not gonna waste your time watching me lose a bunch of fish. But if you guys like this video, subscribe to my page, hit the like button. It really helps my page and gives me a reason to keep making videos and teaching you guys how I catch fish. Hopefully you guys like this video and learned a thing or two. Take care and have a nice day. Good luck fishing.